What's up everyone, I'm Dave Mech and welcome to another video. And in this video I'm going to show you the Elara 4 and the effects by Union Audio. So let's go. So this is the Elara 4 and again this is a beauty. A beautiful designed mixer. Again, this is one of the best looking mixers I've ever had in my hands. The Elara 6 still tops the list for me personally, but yeah, it's also a lot bigger. This is very compact, as you can see. I don't have big hands, so it's actually, you can see it's a very small, compact mixer. Very nice. And again, the design choices they made for this mixer series is just incredible to me. I love it. Looks really modern, slick, high quality, and also you can really feel that for the knobs as well. The knobs are super high quality. Big, nice resistance to them. Yeah, just looks really, really nice. We have a mid dent for each of the EQ sections and for the isolator, which is nice. And the faders also feel very good. Very nice slide to them, like the Elara 6. The resistance is just perfect. You can still throw them up if you want, but they're not too loose. They're also there's not too much resistance. So again, yeah, they found a perfect balance between those two. So here we have the back of the Elara 4. You can see that we have a master out. We have a record out, which takes the output just before the master volume knob. So the master volume knob is not affecting the record output. It's line level. So if you use a field recorder or anything, make sure that you somehow attenuate it before. And we have a aux return or insert. You can also use this as an aux return, which is nice. But yeah, you don't have a aux return level knob, which is a bit unfortunate. Would have been nice to have that. But you can also use it as a master insert, which is nice. Then we have a switch for insert on and off. It's also good to know. And you got your booth out, your aux out. You got your ground for your vinyl record players. So we get a mic input. So either you use this channel as for vinyl or for a mic or for line. So it's between these two or this one and your channel inputs other than that. So that's the back of the Elara. And also good to know, there's no power switch on the back. It's actually on the front panel. Cool, right? I got the Elara 4 here, which is the little sister or little brother of the Elara 6. The Elara 6 is the mixer that I've been using in my live setups for some time now, a couple of months. And I'm really, really a big fan of the sound and the flexibility of, yeah, that mixer. And they sent me this Elara 4 to test out, including this effects unit, which is pretty interesting. So first I want to go over the Elara 4 and have a listen to the EQ section and yeah, what is what, basically. The cool thing about the Elara 4 is that it's super compact. It's a very tiny mixer. I don't know if you're familiar with the size of the Digitect and the Digitone size boxes, but you can see just how small this mixer is. It's very compact, so it is actually quite ideal for smaller live setups. Very nice. You got the 4 channel faders here. Even got a nice crossfader here. We can route each of these channels to the crossfader, right? We have a smooth control over the curve of the fader. So if I route this to the left and this to the right, smooth, or very responsive. So that's the crossfader and the faders. Very nice control over that. We have cue buttons for each of these channels. Very nice. So we can use the headphone cue to cue separate channels. And on the topic of the cue section, we have a volume knob for the headphones, of course. We can split the headphones, so we hear the cued channels on the left and the main mix on the right of our headphone. And if you turn this off, you can also just hear the cue only on your phones or blend in the main mix as well on your headphone, which is pretty cool feature. I like this. It's very nice. I personally don't use queuing when I play live, but still quite nice. Of course, here is the headphone output, and we could actually also use this as an extra send, because we also have one aux send. This could, in fact, give us a second aux send, so to speak. Cool. Moving on, we have the nice EQ section. We have a high-pass filter, actually, which is very, very good sounding, and that's kind of the thing that I'm also a fan of the Elara 6. The filter is amazing. The cool thing about this filter is it goes from 18 hertz to 1.8 kilohertz, and there's an automatic cue added, which becomes higher the higher you go. So you get this at the higher frequencies, you get this nice analog filter sound. But when you go low, it doesn't overblow, make the low end super loud. So it's very smooth filtering. And you have one for each channel, which is great. So it can be a very nice way of blending two tracks together with this EQ section. So the EQ section, we only have a 3-band EQ, but still very useful. So we have a low, which I'm fairly certain it's a low shelf. Its cue point is at 200 hertz. Then we have a mid, which frequency is set to 1.1 kilohertz. And we have a high, which is set to 2 kilohertz. Boost 6 dB, cuts 24 dB. Very nice. Together with the high-pass filter, can do some interesting stuff. Very cool. So we have a switch to switch from RIA to line. So we can actually use for each of the channels, we have phono for vinyl if you want, which is great. We have a trim knob, obviously, so we can adjust the volume. Quite a huge amount of gain if you want. It's pretty insane, actually. Very nice. Very clean sounding as well. And then we have the one aux send with the pre-button, which means that if I lower the channel fader, I can still send this channel to whatever effects unit I have connected to it. And I'll show you this later when we get into the effects. So moving on, those are this is basically how the channels are set up. Again, you can hear the quality in sound. It's all very high quality and no compromise sound, which is really, really nice. And then we have the Isolator section, which is great. So this is a master isolator, which means that whatever channels I've running will be affected by it. It means that it will cut everything completely when I turn them all the way counterclockwise, right? Again, we get a 6 dB boost. And the cool thing about this isolator is that we have a variable frequency, crossover frequency between the mid and the low. And with this you can do some very interesting effects. So if I cut the mid, I start moving crossover point. Get this awesome phasing effect. Together with this mid section, you can get some interesting results. Obviously, it's gonna affect what the high frequency is doing as well, right? This gives you so much control over your entire sound. You could use it as an effect, as you can see. You can also use it to, you know, cut a little bit of the mids if you want to get that modern kind of sound. Maybe you have a couple of vinyls from the 90s and you want to boost the low end a little bit, cut the mids a little bit to make them a bit more modern sounding. It's all possible. Of course, you can sort of do the same with the EQ, but it definitely has a different vibe to it, and you get more control over crossover frequency, which means that you have more control over what the mid and the lows are boosting actually, and the highs as well. Very clever design, a lot of control with just 4 knobs. Moving on, we have a master volume knob, of course. We have a booth volume control, and yeah, the headphone section that I already covered. Yeah, that's the Elara 4. And now I want to move on to the Le Effects. And the Le Effects is a very cool effects unit. It has 8 effects available, and 3 of those are send effects, and the other effects are insert effects. Meaning that for the first 3, it will add the effect to the dry signal, and the insert effects, the flanger, phaser, bit crusher, high pass filter reverse, and high pass filter stutter, will blend from dry to fully wet. So that will completely affect the entire dry signal, basically. Whereas the analog delay, BPM delay, and reverb are send effects and will be added to the dry signal. And the way I've set it up currently, there's a lot of different setups you can use for this unit. Actually, a lot of inputs and outputs. As you can see, we have XLR ins and outs. If you want to put this from your mixer through the Le Effects to whatever stage mixer is used, you can also use it as an insert, master insert. We also have a master insert on the Elara 4, by the way, which is very nice. And you can also use your RCA ins and outs for instance, when you want to use it as a aux send, which I've currently set it up as, because it gives me a lot of flexibility in showing you the difference between the send effects and the insert effects. And we can also switch between using the first 3 effects for aux send and return, or as a normal effects unit where you blend it in, add it to the dry signal, basically. So let's immediately show you how to do that. Basically, you take out the power, and we hold these 2 buttons, and then plug the power back in, and then wait until this light doesn't blink anymore. It's blinking. Yeah, there we go. So now it's set to fully as a send effects, and I'm going to show you the analog delay, BPM delay, and reverb to start with. Also good to know is whenever you unplug, or when the power goes off, it goes back to its default setting where it's a normal send effect, adding the wet signal to the dry signal for the 3 effects. So if you want to use it as an aux send return, every time you power it on, you have to do this button combination to switch it to that aux send setting. Hope that makes sense. So let's have a look at the first 3 effects in their normal capacity. So basically, I am using it as a aux send return, but I can simply set this to this channel, and send it to the Le Effects. So aux send out to the Le Effects out into channel 3. as you can see here. So this is the effects output that you're currently listening to. So I simply send channel 1 pre-fader to the effects. And now I can set this to 0, which is the analog delay. And every time you switch to another effect, the effects will turn off. So that's kind of good to know. So if I switch to another effects, you can see that now it turns off. So switch back to analog delay, turn it on, and add. And I have the high pass filter on, so let's add some. This is the analog delay. So we get a feedback on parameter 2, as you can hear. And the delay time. You can hear the pitch shifting. It's really similar to a bucket braid delay. There's no BPM detection for this. So you have to kind of dial it in, which is actually pretty cool. And with the feedback high, you can hear it's never self-oscillating. Which just makes it very safe to use. It sounds amazing. Let's move on to the BPM delay. You can see that we have this 3 LED dots thingy, which basically is a binary indication of which of the effects we're using. So lights off means 0 analog delay. First LED on means BPM delay. And you can see that this is turned blue. And it has detected the BPM. And it's a very good system. It works really well if there's a clear pulse in the music, like so, like this. And you can really hear that it is actually detecting really well. So let's turn this on. We can hear some auto panning. Again, this is feedback. And delay time, which is now synced. You can hear me. I'm sending this a bit too loud through the effects. Now it's cleaner. But I actually, if I turn this up, listen to the distortion. It's not ugly at all. It's a very, very nice, warm. See? I'll show this a bit more later. For now, let's keep it fairly clean. So you can do some very nice stuttery effects like this. Turning this on. Turning this up a little bit. You can see that it's a nice volume indicator as well. See, now it's a bit. Turn it up a little bit. There you go. Let's move on to the reverb. Now we have 2 controls. They're a bit counterintuitive, I think, but so let's choose illuminated, so reverb. But it's easy to get used to. So we got, if we set this to minus, both to minus, we actually get a very large room. And when I turn this up, the room becomes smaller. And with this, it's a combination of pre-delay. So with this, currently at the minimum, the pre-delay is the biggest. It's the highest. And the high-pass filter is the lowest. And I turn this up. You can hear the pre-delay coming faster. Shorter, I should say. And the high-pass filter frequency increasing. room is now set to the smallest setting. If I turn this down, the room becomes bigger. I kind of like it when I max this out and turn this down to the minimum. Get this very cool short slapback reverb effect. I almost wish that we could have some control over the pre-delay if I tap tempo. This kind of also works. I can set it to wherever I want it, because the higher I go, the shorter the pre-delay. So that actually sounds pretty good, I'd say. Let's move on to the flanger. So you can hear this is controlling the depth. This is an LFO sweeping the frequency. Usually not a huge fan of flangers, but this actually sounds pretty neat. Okay, let's move on to phaser. Phasers I'm a huge fan of, actually. Let's add some. So parameter 1 controls the filter sweep speed. Parameter 2 changes the filter depth. The notches of the phaser are quite deep. Yeah, see, with some strings or trumpets in the background. Effect becomes much more obvious. Okay, let's move on to the next. Now we have a bit crusher. Bit depth, which makes sense. Max is maximum bit depth. Low is minimum bit depth. And parameter 2 is dry-wet ratio. So with this all the way to the max, to make it a bit more subtle. Well, if I set this to the minimum, it really affects all the sound. Bit crushes everything. With this you can blend in the dry signal again, see? Which is nice. It's never, to the max it's not completely gone. For that you can use this, of course, or great sounding little bit crusher. Okay, let's move on to high pass filter reverse. We have a high pass filter and a reverse effect. Very wide effect. So I can use this as sort of a breakdown. Very cool. Let's move on to the high pass filter stutter, which is number 7. And obviously we're gonna get some of the same qualities. Let's turn this on. High pass filter. And you can sort of hear the repeated sample of whatever is recorded into the buffer. You can blend between the two. So, those are the effects of LeFX. Now, another cool thing that I wanted to show you is that you can drive this thing pretty good actually, and it sounds actually pretty good. So if I would set this to analog delay, for instance, you can hear that it starts to overdrive. See that distortion that you heard? So another cool thing about setting this up as an aux send is that, and having it come back on a channel, is that I can actually set up a feedback loop. And yeah, I always warn, be careful with feedback loops because it can become very loud very, very fast. So you need to be very careful with how loud you set it. Don't make large changes to the trim, to the send actually, and the trim as well, because it will start to feedback very, very quickly. So first thing that I'm gonna do is actually I'm gonna set this back to the option fully send. So it's an aux send effects now. So now we don't hear the dry signal anymore. It's just fully the analog delay. And I'm gonna create a feedback loop by sending this back to the effects, and it will come back into the channel and again go to the effects to create a little feedback loop. And that will make sure that the feedback will actually be able to self-oscillate, so be careful. And the faster the delay time, the faster the feedback will go mental. So there we go. Now the cool thing is this thing starts overdriving, so there's a sort of a natural limiter almost built in, as you can hear. It never goes completely mental because it's just distorting now. Okay, let's try that with some other effects, namely the reverb actually. So you can also hear the distortion here really well. So I'm sending this way too loud to the effects. I'm totally exaggerating, but giving that a little bit of saturation by sending it into loud a little bit is actually quite cool. The cool thing is, as long as you keep this moving, and again, when you go into loud, it sort of automatically limits any feedback that goes overboard, which is actually great. But still, be careful. Always be careful with feedback loops. But this is actually great. I like it. So I think I showed everything basically. Yeah, so the effects, very cool effects, very hands-on. Sounds great. Nice saturation. Feedback looping is fun. And of course, yeah, remember that the way I've set it up now is a little bit unusual in that I have it enter another channel. But depending on your setup, if you have a free channel, this is actually very cool and creative. You can do some interesting stuff with that. The thing that you have to keep in mind though, that if you are using one of the insert effects, so this is the dry signal, just the normal channel, right? If I send this to the effects, like so, turn this up a little bit to make, and it's now off, right? Same signal. Let me set this to flanger actually. Make it very obvious. There's still, you know, it is fully affecting the signal, but we can still hear the original signal. So if I have this open and blend this in, you will get, yeah, this sort of an extra layer of flanging, obviously, because we hear both the dry signal and this affected signal, which also contains a lot of the same frequencies as the dry signal. So it's kind of good to remember if you use this kind of setup. See? You can still hear a little bit of flanging. So that's kind of good to know. You can cut the lows, that's what I would do. So it's a bit easier to blend in. Maybe cut the low as well a little bit. Now you have a nice extra layer if you want. Generally, what you want to do is put this on the main out of a groove box, put it on the main out of a mixer, use it as an insert effect on a master insert, or use it as a send effects and only use the 3 and make sure that you set it to aux send, switch it to aux send. But you can see that it's also nice to sort of embrace all this weird stuff and just use it however you want to incorporate it. Very nice device. One little extra point that I want to make is that it is almost as high as the Elara 4. So that's nice for flight case duties and that sort of thing. Yeah, you can really set it up nicely next to your Elara 4. Also, like so, right? Which is quite nice. Very compact and good sounding. So that's my deep dive into the Elara 4 and the Le effects, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next deep dive jam tutorial sampling session, whatever. So thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell for the bell thingy. Ciao.